Most Venerable Prahakruhu Athita, who is the rector of Mahachulalongkornrajamahavidyalaya University, Chiang. Most venerable monks who are sitting here, Honorable Consul of Consulate of India in Chiang, Sri Chaitanya Prakash ji, most respected our Dr. Fisit Kosfu, who is the director of postgraduate institute of this university, Dr. Ranjit Singh ji also, who is present here, and the faculty members of our Mahachulalongkornrajamahavidyalaya who are sitting here, and the professors who are joining this program, our venerable students, and all participants who are joining this program through online also. It is indeed a very great pleasure for me to get associated with this great university, Mahachulalongkornrajamahavidyalaya University. I feel myself privileged and proud also to come here and to speak on the topic which has been given and which is a very burning topic, or it is related with our society also at the present time. The topic which has been suggested to me by our Dr. Fisit, I am very much grateful to him that the topic which has been decided by this university, that is most suitable for the contemporary problems of the society throughout the globe. So whenever we are talking about the Buddhist studies, let us discuss that Buddhism is a religion. We do not consider as a religion, but it is a theory and practice, Pariyatti and Patipatti, which takes a wing from the state of suffering to the state of eternal bliss. But when we are talking about Buddhism, it is not a religion, but it is a way of life. How we are taking the teachings of the Buddha or ideals of the teachings of the Buddha in our day-to-day life, how we are practicing this in the form of Pariyatti, the teachings which are available in the Pali literature, how we are practicing in our day-to-day life. But when we are talking about the Buddhist studies, it is a discipline which encompasses all the aspects of Buddhism. It includes Pali language literature, it includes Buddhist hybrids, Sanskrit literatures, it includes Buddhist history, Buddhist philosophy, and all the literatures which are available in Tibetan language literature as well as in Chinese Buddhist literature. So Buddhist studies has become an international discipline which discusses all aspects of Buddhism in various dimensions, how the literature, philosophy, culture, religion, whether they are sociological, whether they are anthropological or sociological, all aspects of Buddhism which have been discussed, this is called as Buddhist studies. First of all, in this my presentation, I will discuss that what are the problems which the discipline Buddhist studies are facing challenges in the present day time. And then we'll discuss that how some of the concepts or the theories available in the form of Pariyatti, how they have been interpreted by the Buddhist scholars to have practices in our day-to-day life. So in this paper, I am going to discuss, first of all, that what the faculty or what the discipline Buddhist studies encompasses all the aspects of our teachings of the Buddha. So here, as we have already seen, that Buddhism is a Pariyatti and Patipatti. Both aspects are included. Pariyatti is in the form of teachings of the Buddha available in the Pali literature, Sanskrit Buddhist literature, Chinese Buddhist literature, and Tibetan Buddhist literature. And the practice, how the teachings of the Buddha are practiced or developed in our day-to-day life. So a study of the teachings of the Buddha, from which the academic discipline Buddhist studies developed, has since the beginning placed an equal emphasis on both theoretical Pariyatti and practical aspect Patipatti, where if theory without practice was considered empty, practice without theory was deemed blind also. From the time of the Buddha, there were 5 types of lineage where bhikkhus were living, that is the Pasad, Bihar, Hamya, Guha. So where the people bhikkhus who were living in the Aram or the Bihar, they developed in the form of higher centers of learning, and later on they called as Mahavihar. In Mahavihar, there were scriptural teachings in the form of Pariyatti, and there were practices also. In the Manorath Purni, which is the commentary of Anguttara Nikaya, it is said that the bhikkhus who are practicing Bipasana, that will be not complete until unless they do not have the full knowledge of Pariyatti, that is the scriptural teachings of the Buddha. So both are interdependent, Pariyatti and the Patipatti. Without Patipatti, Pariyatti does not have any significance. And even the teachings of the Buddha, when they are not practiced, they do not have any significance. So the main element in this tradition was the study of the text on what the Buddha taught. The study of the text was a way of life, as opposed to solely being an academic pursuit. So in the beginning, when there was a concept of Nalanda Mahavihar or Vikramshila Mahavihar, they were only that how a bhikkhu can get a state of eternal bliss. But now Buddhist studies, it has become a pursuit of academic gain, or how we can get the knowledge. Today, however, within the university education system, Buddhist studies is another subject with an emphasis on knowledge gathering, including not just postgraduate studies, but early education in the schools. It is devoid for the most part of any existential meaning and relevance to life. So this is the nowadays we are having so many Mahachulalongkornrajamahavidyalaya, where the monks are also taking scriptural teachings, as well as they have practical aspects of their teachings also, or trainings also. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Most welcome. So, while education as a means of livelihood is a practical need and cannot be ignored as a subject like Buddhist studies, however, should not be just another subject, as it has to be taught in such a way that its essence is not lost. Now, we study as a discipline of Buddhist studies only for the sake of gathering our knowledge, but not for the taking essence in our practical life. So in support of this perspective, the philosophy of Buddha presents a challenge to the modern mind, and therefore It should be primary function and duty of modern scholars of Buddhist studies to examine its solutions to the basic questions. So there was a time when scholars like Professor D.J. Kahalupahna, who wrote History of Buddhist Philosophy, and Professor K.N. Jaitilake, who wrote Buddhist Theory of the Knowledge. And they were the pioneer in keeping the teachings of the Buddha in the form of academic pursuit or academic discipline. How the essence of the teachings of the Buddha can be put in the form of the knowledge. So these were the scholars. In order to be a modern day Buddhist scholar, one that is capable of meeting the challenges of the globalized world, he or she needs to be equipped with both traditional languages such as Pali and Sanskrit, modern languages of both the East and West, and with Buddhist philosophy and other Eastern philosophy. So being a Buddhist scholar, a person must have the knowledge of Pali and the Sanskrit, as well as he must have knowledge of Tibetan or Chinese also. And if a Buddhist scholar has any knowledge of any our European language, that will be better for the Buddhist scholar also to interpret the teachings of the Buddha in good manner. We are having scholars like T.W.D. Davids and K.R. Norman, how they have been analyzing the teachings of the Buddha in different manners. Again, I am giving you some of the examples of the Sri Lanka, Myanmar, and Thailand, how the Buddhist studies is being developed as a academic discipline. So in the higher education field, major Sri Lankan universities teach Buddhist studies, Buddhist civilization, including the Buddhist civilization, culture, philosophy, and related subject for undergraduate. There are also separate private colleges specialists in various aspects of the Buddhist studies discipline. These universities have postgraduate programs for students both local and foreign, mostly from Southeast Asian and East Asian countries. So scholars from India, scholars from Thailand, scholars from Myanmar, they are visiting to the universities of Sri Lanka for having higher educations. In India, we are having some of the universities, not more than 15, which are imparting studies of the Buddhism in different courses at the level of undergraduate and postgraduate and higher educations also. So that in Myanmar also we are having a state Pariyatti University or SIVA, that is International School of Buddhist Studies, and there are so many universities which are imparting theoretical and practical aspects of teachings of the Buddha. In Thailand, we are having so many universities which are devoted for imparting teachings of the Buddha in the form of undergraduate and the postgraduate. There are some of the universities which are especially devoted for monks and nuns also. Again, the only way to study Pali language is through Buddhist text. And these days, Pali is taught as a subject in universities for a journal to honors, which is composed of a Buddhist conceptual and a philosophical aspect coupled with linguistic and literary approaches, with most of the students being Buddhist monks. So it is said that when a person goes through the Pali text in original as many times, he can understand the teachings of the Buddha in a better manner, rather than going through the translations of the Buddhist text. So a study of the Sanskrit language containing the literature of the Mahayana and other Buddhist schools is also taught in some of the universities in Sri Lanka, in Thailand, in some of the universities of Myanmar also, from the elementary level to the advanced level. In this case, too, the majority of the students are monk. Another aspect of Buddhist or Pali studies, which includes courses on what is termed as Abhidhamma. So Abhidhamma is called as excellent and profound teachings of the Buddha, which analyzes the consciousness, psychic factors, material qualities, and a state of eternal bliss. And these are ascribed in higher doctrine of philosophy and is contained in the Pali canon only. So when composed to the practice of same in Myanmar, when Abhidhamma takes central stage in the curriculum and is monitored and studied in a traditional manner, while containing commentaries and the sub-commentaries, studies of the same to Sri Lanka University remain at the introductory level. Noting that again, unlike in the case of Myanmar, in Sri Lanka, there is no widespread traditions of monastic Abhidham studies. Abhidham and grammar both are taught in Myanmar to the students. So for the Abhidhamma, we are lacking in Sri Lanka, in our India also. There are very few universities which are imparting the excellent and profound teachings of the Buddha. Myanmar is the only country which imparts Abhidhamma along with the grammar, because they think that without grammar, Abhidhamma concepts cannot be understood. And even the grammar cannot be understood without the knowledge of Abhidhamma. Further, another discipline which Buddhist studies is taught is the philosophy, which is taught in different Indian universities in the Department of Philosophy, where Buddhist philosophy, especially Theravada and Mahayana Buddhist philosophy texts are being taught. In the local university, the Buddhist studies subject is taught as a 3 years general or 4-year degree course, where the streams that these students can choose from include Buddhist studies, culture, Buddhist philosophy, which includes courses on subjects related to Buddhist logic, Buddhist epistemology, and ethics, while survey courses on Indian and Western philosophy are also offered in some of the universities of India, especially in South, University of Madras or University of Tamil Nadu. Again, academic career opportunities for students in the field are very much limited, and therefore it is very competitive. It is also noted that since graduate students in Japan, Hong Kong, and European countries depend almost entirely on financial assistance, and since such assistance is hard to come by, the number of students going to these countries is decreasing. Previously, Government of India was sponsoring a scholarship and fellowships to the students to go Japan, Hong Kong, and other European countries through the SARC fellowship and other fellowships. Now, the number of fellowships are decreased, so students are also not encouraged to go there. So during the last century, Sri Lankan Buddhist scholars had a reputation for comparative philosophical knowledge because they had their training in Western philosophical or religious departments. The fact that most of them completed their undergraduate studies in the English medium was helpful for their further study in different academic environments. But nowadays, in our contemporary days, one cannot say the same about the English proficiency of would-be university teachers in Buddhist studies, which is another reason as to why they look for opportunities in non-English speaking countries. Owing to this shift in the location of their studies, however, they adopt different approaches to Buddhist studies and have expertise in different areas of the subject. We are having some of the examples that students who pass out BA honors or MA in Pali, they try to choose their academic career in the field of Chinese language and literatures. They get the fellowship from the Chinese government, they go to the China, and they adopt the career of Chinese language and literatures. So the main purpose of our study Pali text becomes irrelevant because they choose different discipline after passing through our MA or BA honors in Pali or Buddhist studies. So nowadays there is a challenge before the Buddhist studies discipline also. So these changes are neither good nor bad in themselves, as much depends not on what they study, but how they pursue their study of the Buddhism. Now the approach of a study of Buddhist studies as a discipline has become changed. The persons who are coming to this discipline, they do not get the proper settlement or establishment in this discipline. They try to shift in other discipline also. So references now, this is related with the discipline Buddhist studies. Now we are going to discuss that how some of the concepts in our Buddhist studies, they are going to be interpreted by the Buddhist scholars in India, in Sri Lanka, in Myanmar, and in Thailand. How the persons, they are trying to interpret some of the basic concepts of teachings of the Buddha and how they are influencing or making an impact to the society of the different countries also. So here references to karma with the implications to rebirth and other worlds is a common place in classical Buddhism, both in Sravakyan or Theravada Buddhism or in Mahayana form of Buddhism. So doctrine of karma, rebirth, and other worlds are accepted in both Brahmanical and non-Brahmanical system, except in Charvak system of Indian philosophy. In Brahmanical traditions, these doctrines are closely associated with our ritualism and rules governing hierarchical caste system. I am not going to discuss about the Brahmanical system, but in other non-Brahmanical systems, particularly in Buddhism, their rules are associated with the rules of moral conduct and spiritual advancement. So, how the result of the immoral or moral dharmas are coming and how they are going to be changed or interpreted in different manner by our Buddhist scholars. So results of some of the morally good or bad actions supposed to be experienced in some future birth. And it is said that if a person does a moral actions, he gets resultant of the moral actions. If a person does immoral actions, he get the resultant of immoral actions. It is never seen that a person who does the moral actions, he gets the resultant of the immoral actions. But the scholars nowadays, they are changing or interpreting these terms in a different manners. We'll discuss that how this concept is going to be changed. Higher and lower worlds, Swarg and Narak, are imagined for explaining the future of highly meritorious or sinful actions. The stages of the aspirants or yogavachars, moral spiritual development, are explained in terms of number of births one is required to spend before arhathood. So the scholars in the Buddhist studies, they might be knowing that there are 4 stages for getting a state of eternal bliss or nirvana. That is the Sotapanna, Sagdagami, Anagami, and Arahat. And a Yogavachar in the stage of Sotapanna, he has to get 7 times of birth if he does not get a state of eternal bliss. In the case of Sagdagami, a person has to get birth only once, and for Anagami, he does not need any time to come in this earth, and for Arhat, he is a liberated person. So Mahayana Buddhism, there is a different approach of the rebirth. A Mahayanist Bodhisattva desires to be reborn again and again, even in the lower worlds, till all beings are liberated. In this way, a strong element of belief in rebirth and other worlds in the traditional Buddhist ethics and soteriology in both their Sravakyan and Mahayana forms of Buddhism. So in the last 2 centuries, due to advent of science, the transcendental beliefs like rebirth, other worlds, and disembodied liberation came to be challenged. Again, some Buddhist thinkers came forward who claimed that the essence of Buddhism can be maintained without accepting the doctrine of rebirth. So there are some of the associated concepts like Pratitya Samutpad, Sansara, or Nirvana. They were interpreted by Buddhist scholars in a different manners, what the scriptural texts are interpreting in different manner. So there are 2 categories of the scholars of Buddhist studies who are accepting the things, that is the unconditional rejection of the traditional rebirth doctrine. So in this category, the names of Thai spiritual leaders, Venerable Buddhadas Bhikkhu and Stefano Bachelor, the advocate of the secular Buddhism, may be included. The second category of the Buddhist scholars, like they are accepting rebirth doctrine at belief level, but allowing non-belief at the level of religious practice. Here we can include the name of Bipasana Master Sri Satnarayan Goenkaji and His Holiness the 14th Tenzin Gyatso Dalai Lama. Now I am coming to the first category, Most Venerable Buddhadas Bhikkhu. He presented his position or the question of life after death very clearly in his talk entitled No Religion. He says that there is no need to speak about what happens after death. What is the point of talking about the state of being buried in the ground? It is irrelevant. Second, contradictions between the no soul theory, anatta, and rebirth, punarbhava. He says that even though I am sitting here now, yet there is no individual to be found. When we say that na hetapuggalo pulavati in the Milinda Pahyo, Acharya Nagsen says that na hetapuggalo pulavati sachikathena paramatto upalaguti. Sankha samaya payati boharo namamattam jadidam nagseno surseno. So Buddhadas says that when there is no individual, na hetapuggalo pulavati, what is to die and what is then to be reborn? Then Buddha Buddhadas presents about the nirvana concept also, that is nirvana attained after death or here in this life? This is one of the Abhyakat question which was put before the Buddha also. And he, Buddhadas Bhikkhu says that Nibbana means dying before death, which means dying to selfhood before death of the body. Now, regarding the Pratitya Samutpad, law of dependent originations, how the modern scholars, they are talking about it. As we say in the Buddhist text, in Pali literature, it is said that there is no self-independent entity. Everything comes into existence dependent on some cause and condition. In Madhyam Nikaya, it has been said that imasmim sati idam hoti, imasmim asati idam na hoti, imasu upada idam upajjati, imasu nirodha idam nirojjati. So this is the traditional interpretations of law of dependent originations. But according to Buddhadas, this is a misconception. And there are 3 lifetimes in the Buddhist text, all the 12 links from the Abhijjapache Sankhara till Jaramaran. There are 3 lifetimes, that is the Atita Kala, Vartaman Kala, and Anagat Kala. But according to Buddhadas, he says that it is the misconception, and he interprets it is not necessary to cover a period of 3 lifetimes, Atit, Vartaman, or Pachupan, or Anagat. In the flick of eyelash, whenever there is a flicking of one eyelash, one completes cycle of dependent originations. Together with suffering comes to pass. So Buddhadas also says that birth as the birth of a thought involving an attachment of any kind. So birth and rebirth in this sense occur every now and then in our life. He explains even the 4 Aryan stages of spiritual development like Sotapatti, Sagdagami, Anagami, and Arhat without reference to rebirth. In this context, he interprets returning as returning of mind to worldliness, that how our thought comes to this earthly place. Now, how this idea of rebirth has been also interpreted by one of the great revivalists of Buddhism in India, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar did not accept rebirth in its traditional sense. Like Buddhadas Bhikkhu, he also claimed that the doctrine of anatta, no soul, is incompatible with the rebirth of the same person. He interpreted rebirth as configuration of living body from the same stock of material elements. While secularizing the concept of rebirth, he also secularized other related doctrines. For example, he interpreted in the Buddha is Dhamma related with this concept of rebirth, that this is the Upaj Vedaniya Kamma, that is the action which yields fruit in the next life as a remotely effective Kamma. Traditional Buddhism accepts the doctrine of karma. Now we are talking about that, how theory of the karma has been interpreted in the text and how it is being interpreted by our modern Buddhist scholars. So traditional Buddhism accepts the doctrine karma in order to support morality. So it depends upon the morality, that is the seal, one who does the physical or vocal actions. It implied that there is already a moral order in the universe due to which a good action will result into happiness and a bad action will result into unhappiness due to the same persons, either in this life or in the next. This doctrine in this form was not acceptable to Ambedkar because it has a necessary implication of afterlife. While giving an alternative interpretation of karma doctrine, he maintained that the moral order is not pre-existence in the universe, but it is something human beings can bring about the sustain with the help of their good actions. The moral order, if brought about the sustained, will be beneficial to the society at large. So Ambedkar in this way reinterpreted the doctrine of karma, thereby maintaining its moral force, but avoiding the implications to after life. There is a great scholar who had been in Myanmar, Lady Sayadaw, who has also interpreted the theory of karma in the text Anudipani and Paramattha. And he says that the resultant of the moral karma or immoral karma can be motivated into different manners also. He has given the examples that after killing the brothers of King Sok, how he made the chaityas, temples, and he made so many charitable works. So at the time of the death, the resultant of the moral actions, what he has done in the form of charitable actions, he went to the heaven also. So how the resultant of the immoral actions can be motivated into the resultant of moral actions also. So this is the interpretations of modern scholars nowadays also. Now the Pratyekta Sabutpad, Ambedkar interprets in different manner. He interpreted the doctrine of dependent originations as cause as effect relations and used it as an argument against the existence of the God. Buddhism does not believe in the Almighty God, and he says that everything, so whatever it happens in our day-to-day life, it is because of the God, cause and conditions. So because of there is no existence of the God, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar accepts this law of dependent originations. He did not associate with the formula of 12 linked chain, Dwadas Nidan. Lastly, Ambedkar interpreted Nirvana not as a transcendental state, but as the life free from craving. Hence, Dr. Ambedkar secularized the whole family of the concepts which traditionally implied rebirth, other worlds, and transcendental existence. Now, there is a great scholar, Stefano Bachelor, and he has given the interpretations of the secular Buddhism in three terms, like something contrasting with the religious, something pertaining to this world, and thirdly, referring to the transfer of power from church to state. In this form, Estefan Bachelor has also discussed about the Buddhism. He says that mindfulness meditations can be called secular in all the three senses. That is, in the first, the religious, in this world, and from power church to state. So traditional form of Buddhism, whether of Theravada or Mahayana type, follows the soteriological framework of the beginning less series of birth and death. Both Theravada and Mahayana, they think that there is a only aim to get a state of eternal bliss, and there is a beginningless of the birth and the death. Modern persons may have fascinations for the practice of mindfulness. Nowadays, mindfulness, the sati or smriti has become a fascination for practicing mindfulness. But it will make little sense to them if they are told that they will not follow the Dhamma truly unless they accept the tenets of the Indian soteriology. Until unless one do not follow the Dhamma, these practicings are not beneficial. I will discuss later on related with this aspect. So, Stefano Bachelor, he wrote Buddhism 2.0 as an alternative to traditional Buddhism. So, Stefano Bachelor proposes alternative form of Buddhism, and he interprets Four Noble Truths in a different manner. And we all are of aware the Four Noble Truths, Dukkham Ariya Satcham, Dukh Samudaya Ariya Satcham, Dukh Nirodham Ariya Satcham, Dukh Nirodhagamani Patipada Ariya Satcham. How these Four Noble Truths, which have been analyzed in our Pali text, how Estefan Bachelor gives in different interpretations. He says that here the first noble truth is in the sense of knowing fully, that is the parigyan. Second, dukh samudaya satya is in the task of letting go, prahan. And third noble truth, that is the dukh nirodham ariya satyam, that it has the task of seeing directly, sachat karana. And the fourth is the marg, which refers, that is the dukh nirodha gamani patipadariya satyam. It refers to the task of bringing into being, that is the bhavana. So according to Stefano Bachelor's, there are four tasks. The task of understanding suffering fully, that what is the jati pi dukkha, jara pi dukkha, marnam pi dukkham, apyehi sampayogo dukkho, pyehi vipayogo dukkho, yam pi iksham na labati, tampi sanketena panchopadan, khandhati dukkha. So second task, Stefan Bachelor says that this second noble truth leads to the task of removing its causes, that is the kamatana, bhautana, and vibhautana. And the third task, that is the realization of a state of eternal bliss, tanhai, ases, virago, patnisego, mutti, analayo. And then the fourth task, according to Stefan Bachelor, it leads to the task of following the eightfold path, that is the Samma Titti, Samma Sankappo, Samma Vacha, Samma Kamanto, Samma Vyamo, Samma Ajivo, Samma Sati, Samma Samadhi. So this Buddhadas Vikhu, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and Stefan Bachelor uphold a secular form of Buddhism in a strong sense. Some Buddhist scholars can be called secular in a weaker sense. I am coming to the second category, which we are discussing under the Satyanarayana Goenkaji and Dalai Lama. They did not discuss the belief in rebirth, but bracketed it. The core teachings of the Buddha stood for them independently of belief in rebirth. So there are the two examples of the personalities, like Satyanarayana Goenkaji and His Holiness Dalai Lama. Satyanarayana Goenkaji is not a sectarian Buddhist. He can be called Buddhist or a follower of the Buddha in the sense that he follows the path given by the Gautam Buddha, and this path is available in the Pali Tipitaka. The path of morality, meditations, and wisdom, that is called as three trainings, Tisikha or Trisiksha, that is the Adhisil, Adhichit, and Adhipanya. Moreover, he also tries to persuade others to follow the path of the Dhamma. So, according to Satyanarayana Goenkaji, he says that there are more than 327 times the term Dhamma has come in the Pali Tipitaka. So Goenka in this sense can be called as a modern Buddhist. So Goenka theory and technique of Bipasana meditations is traceable to early Buddhism. The text which was available at the time of the Buddha and which sent to Thailand, Sri Lanka, and Myanmar. The technique which was developed in Myanmar, it is available nowadays also. And Satnarayan Goenka, the technique of meditation or Bipasana, which was started by Yuba Khin, it is also running in our India also. So Goenka also believes in the doctrine of karma and rebirth. Goenka interprets Buddha's theoretical and practical teachings not as a religion, but as a science. Basically, it is science of mind. That is why he always tries to emphasize that one should purify his mind. Again, Goenka theory of Vipassana can be understood as a psychological analysis of sensation, Vedana. According to theory of dependent originations, Vedana is outcome of the contact, spars or spars, pachaya Vedana, and mind with the object. However, at a deeper level, the cause of pleasant and unpleasant sensations is craving, tanha. So craving is of the nature of attachment, that is the raga and asakti. So according to the theory of Vipassana, one is not supposed to develop attachment towards the pleasant sensation, not aversion towards the unpleasant sensation. One has to observe how they arise and cease and develop equanimity based on the insight into their impermanence. So a stage may come when the Vipassana practitioner experiences only subtle sensations all over the body. So this is an indication of the fact that the impressions of the unwholesome roots accumulated in this life are considered reduced. But after having such an experience for a long time, one may again have gross sensations. While explaining this phenomena, Goenka ji refers to the past impressions accumulated in past lives as the possible cause. However, the notion of past impressions does not form a central part of the theory. Vipassana meditations involves experiencing present sensations, observing how they arise and cease, and developing equanimity towards them. Anything which is not directly experienced and is a matter of metaphysical belief, it is to be bracketed during Vipassana practice according to Goenka ji. Though the recipients of the Goenka's Vipassana teaching include both believers and non-believers of different backgrounds, he in his Vipassana instructions asks them to bracket their metaphysical beliefs. What applies to the metaphysical beliefs in God or soul also applies to the belief in rebirth and past karma. Now we are coming to His Holiness the Dalai Lama Tenzin Gyatso. A similar liberal attitude can be found in His Holiness Dalai Lama treatment of the doctrine of rebirth in Buddhism. But now it is based on methodological openness of Mahayana Buddhism. Dalai Lama engages in continuous dialogues with scientists. And there are twofold roles of the Dalai Lama. He poses himself the Buddhist challenges before scientists. He exposes the Buddhist theories to scientific scrutiny and analysis. The second aspect is very significant in the sense also that in the Kalam Sutta, Buddha also says that do not accept the things whatever it comes to you by hearsay, by traditions, by the any traditions, but you accept it whether it is available in our text or not. So dual approach with regard to the doctrines of karma and rebirth and reincarnation. As a spiritual leader and a scholar of Buddhism, he acknowledges the doctrine, but while presenting these ideas before a group of scientists, he presents them in a non-committal way. So, Dalai Lama poses a new theory related with the subtle consciousness. So, a key concept in the explanation of rebirth phenomena, the transition of consciousness from one body to another, is explained through the intermediacy of subtle consciousness. But is there any proof of subtle consciousness? An interesting statement made by the Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama says that, under quote, I am practitioner, so based on my own limited experience and the experience of my friends, I cannot say with 100% certainly that there is a subtle consciousness, unquote. In the same context, Dalai Lama refers to the basic Buddhist approach, which is very open, and explain it in the following words. So this is the quote, under quote, if a strong evidence arises indicating that a given thing exists, then it will be accepted. On the contrary, if there is a strong evidence that suggests the absence of such a thing, even certain things that are specifically asserted in the Buddhist canon, the original words of the Buddha himself, even then, these words are to be interpreted on the basis of valid evidence and not to be accepted at their face value. In Mahaparinibbana Sutta and in the Kalama Sutta, Buddha explains about that investigate the thing scientifically and then accept it. So Dalai Lama also makes emphasis on this point also. This is how the Dalai Lama speaks as a scientific thinker and practitioner. Dalai Lama, as a religious scholar and thinker, does regard the doctrines of rebirth and reincarnation as the basic tenets of Buddhism. So, Dalai Lama on the essence of Buddhism, that what is the Buddhism? Acharya Nagarjuna, when he was asked to summarize the teachings of the Buddha in one word, he told that ahimsa is the only essence of the teachings of the Buddha. But Dalai Lama here, when it comes to the question of essence of Buddhism, he often refers to the two principles, that is the interdependence of all phenomena and second, non-violence. Here, interdependence of all phenomena is the Pratitta Samutpada. So he discusses about Paraspar Asrayata, that dependent on each other, the theory of law of dependent originations, which has been interpreted by Acharya Nagarjuna. So here, His Holiness Dalai Lama also discusses about interdependence of all phenomena. So these two principles by themselves do not necessarily imply rebirth. His Holiness Dalai Lama has been also advocating what he calls secular ethics. Here, secular ethics is in the sense of Dalai Lama interprets that respect to all religions. Don't say anything about any religion, but respecting each religion is called as secular ethics. So he advocates secular ethics as a spirituality which goes beyond religion. From the time of the Buddha also, we find that there were 6 contemporary teachers at the time of the Buddha also. Buddha never talks anything which is not against of any heretical teachers at the time of the Buddha. So we find in our classical text also that Buddha also praises the thoughts of the other contemporary teachers. And here Dalai Lama also says that in the present time, respecting other religions can be also treated as a secular ethics. So now, lastly, what Buddhist studies as a discipline comes to the contemporary society or contemporary Buddhism. So this is the main topic which we are going to discuss, which we have discussed, that is a background as a discipline of the Buddhist studies, and how the some of the theories or the concepts which have been interpreted by our present day Buddhist scholars. So now there is a new trend in the contemporary society. As we know that Buddha always talks about the purification of all the four castes, Chatubarna Parisuddhi. And Buddha also says in the text that no one is inferior, no one is superior. Whosoever thinks that one is superior or inferior, he is engrossed with the papakam dittigatam. He is associated with the false views also. So there were four types of varnas at the time of the Buddha, that is the Brahman, Kshatriyas, Vaisya, and Sudras. But we find some of the references that how sometimes Buddha praises about the Kshatriyas first, and he made a hierarchical institution. And in the Ambatta Sutta, Buddha says that Khatyo Setto Jadatasbim, that Kshatriyas are the superior one. But along with this, he says that one who is associated with Vijja and Charana, that is the seal, Samadhi, and the Panya, he is the excellent one or superior one. So now there is a social thought related with the Buddha, and there are so many suttas in the Pali Tipitaka, like Asalayana Sutta, Madhur Sutta, Kachayana Sutta, or in Sutta Nipat, Brahman Dhammika Sutta, which discusses about the social status of the persons of the society at the time of the Buddha. Buddha always talks about the equality of all the persons. He says that Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaisyas, and Sudras are capable to get a state of eternal bliss, and their purifications, their mind can be purified. Only thing is that they have to make an effort also. But he gives a stress on the equality, and he discusses about the that when there is a equality, it must be associated with the liberty and fraternity. So whenever we talk about the society, there are three things which are discussed, that is the social, economical, and political. So three things, and even if you go through the preamble of Indian Constitution, that has been the whole essence of the teachings of the Buddha has been given in the preamble. Our honorable council is sitting here. I feel myself pleasure to speak preamble of the Constitution, that we, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into secular, democratic, and republic, and to secure justice, liberty, fraternity, and liberty, fraternity, and so there are three terms. And when he talks about the justice, there are three terms which have been given: political, economical, and democratic. So these three terms which have been taken by our Dr. B.R. Ambedkar when he was drafting the constitutions. So he, in the text, Buddhist text also, this equality is combined with liberty and fraternity. Here, liquidity of all the caste, all are equal, and liberty of freedom of expression, thought, and the ideas which are available in the Article 9 of the Constitution of India, and fraternity to secure all the dignity of the human people or humanity. So this is the all the teachings of the Buddha they have been. And now the social justice, the term which has been coined by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. This is also available in our Constitution of India preamble. So now the social activism and social engaged Buddhism, there are 3-4 terms which have been coined nowadays by modern scholars when they are talking about the contemporary society. That is the applied Buddhism, socially engaged Buddhism, and social activism. There is another term which has been coined by the scholars as deep ecology or green Buddhism also. So here, how the teachings of the Buddha can be applied in our day-to-day life, how the ideals of the teachings of the Buddha can be taken in the society for living harmoniously. This is the main active, that is the social activism. So new trend of the Buddhist studies can be linked in part to broader political and economic realities. Whosoever the countries who are professing Buddhism as a religion, they are also devoted for the upliftment of their political as well as economical status of their countries also. So when we are talking about the equality, the political system or economical aspects must be also taken granted. In the Pali Suttas, we are having how there are 10 Raj Dharma, which are meant for the king, royal king, and how he has to behave with their kings or people, and what are the economic aspects which can a king adopt for the welfare of the human beings. So what I say that every theory has a practice also. If theory does not have any practice, there will be no any meaning of any theory also. So here, socially engaged Buddhism is a tool to understand the teachings of the Buddha in our day-to-day life. So here, human well-being is not achieved through only social development, but there is a need of personal transformation also. We have seen that Buddha also talks in Anguttara Nikaya that until unless there is no practical teachings of the Buddha, there will be no meaningful Bipasana or Samadhi also. So both are interdependent. So here Buddhism implies that unless there is some significant personal and individual change in the ways we should try to go on evolving the societies. The most challenging aspect of Buddhist practice is that it requires as a prerequisite rejection of one of views, attitude, and behavior. We are the Buddhist. We go to the refuge of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, but there is a perception of the I-ness, that is the I am the superior one. There is a false views which are covering the nature of reality in our mind, through which we are not able to know the real nature of the Dhamma. So that is through the practice, it requires that how we can remove our misconceptions or the false views. How can we change our attitude or the behavior also? Buddha always talks about the intention and the behavior. When he talks about the intentions, Buddha says that Chetanaha Bhikkhave Kammam Badami Chetitva Kai Kammam Vachi Kammam Manu Kammam. So that is why volition has the main significance in behavior or attitude also. So to quote Sulaka Sri Sivaraksha, again he quotes like this when he is talking about that how there is a personal transformation until unless individual transformation of a person is not being done, there is no sense of social transformation. So he says that, under quote, to suggest that Buddhism has been unconcerned with the organization of the society is to ignore history. Traditionally, Buddhism has been personal salvation and social justice as interlocking components. Again, there is a great USA Buddhist scholar named as Robert Thurman. He writes about this socially engaged Buddhism, that the primary Buddhist position on social action is one of the total activism and unwavering commitment to complete self-transformation and complete world transformation. Since Buddhism is a great civilizing force, it exerts its influence all over the world, thereby contributing to create a better world for all sentient beings to live harmoniously and peacefully. Now, the new trends of the women in modern society. At the time of the Buddha, women were admitted into the Sangha. But later on, we find that after 8th century AD, the women have not been given importance into the Sangha. And we see that how the women are struggling for their existence into the Sangha in Sri Lanka, Thailand, Myanmar, and other Southeast Asian countries. But now the change is coming up. Now the Sri Lankan nuns are also accepting women, and there are so many women who went to Sri Lanka from Thailand. They become nun there, and this is the transformation of the society. In the modern society, now people are accepting women also. So in the last few, Buddhist women have challenged the traditional roles assigned to them in powerful ways, carving out spaces for engaged action in traditional particular society, patriarchal societies. Their activism relates to the right and access to the same kind of training and religious cultivation as men, to the same kind of opportunity and support from society as well as government, so as to achieve their potential on the spiritual path. This was so in the time of the Buddha, and why then can it not be so now? Now, the moral ethics, how the concept of the moral ethics in the scriptures, they are changing nowadays also. By the Buddhist scholars, they are interpreted in another way. In the view of causal process, deeds and doer appear as reciprocally conditions, and a notion is affirmed that is central to the teachings of the Buddha of karma. What we do not do only matters, it molds us. The interplay between the karma and kai, therefore, presents a mutual relationship between our behavior and the psychophysical structure. Again, behavior is not the sole determiner of the experience. Other events condition it also. The effect of a deed upon a person, furthermore, depends upon the person's character as shaped by other deeds also. The Buddha points out that the same kind of act performed by different people can yield diverse results, and those different behavior can produce similar results. He repeatedly emphasized that effects of the past can be modified by present action. This is the new concept by the scholars. As a stress, it is integral to the teachings of the Patitta Samutpad or Patisamutpad, that the sankharas themselves can be altered. Therefore, change in human motivation can destroy the harmful effects of the action. So how the sankharas are responsible for changing our results of the moral and immoral actions. So now we are coming to the last concluding remarks, that many modern Buddhist scholars and spiritual leaders show that it is possible to follow the basic tenets of the Buddhism by rejecting or by passing the doctrine of rebirth. Buddhism says that do not accept the things from the past, traditions or hearsay. We have the references of the Kalama Sutta or the Kesmutti Sutta. Buddhism always says that accept the things with the reasoning and the logic also. And later on in the Mahayana Buddhism, we find the text on the reasoning and logic like Pramanavartika or Jukti Sastika. What is needed, therefore, is not only the factual or objective study, but also interpretive study, which locate the philosophy of Buddhism in the context of human life in particular and existence in general, including nature and environment with all its forms of life. Buddhist scholars should provide a common platform to all the Buddhist traditions to serve humanity in a fully inclusive and more effective way. They should try to establish closer relationship between the various Buddhist traditions and communities by sharing and exchanging knowledge and wisdom, creating a united voice against violence, injustice, and social discord. They should also focus how the teachings of the Buddha surpass the limits of conventional religion to creativity, engage with various philosophers and scientists. So thank you very much for listening patiently my lectures.